Welcome back to RECO12. Happy to have you here. We're continuing our Journey in Recovery series today. I'm Justin, by the way. I am the host of the RECO12 podcast and was also the host of a podcast called Journey Through Life when back in 2019, I felt nudged by my higher power, more like kicked by my higher power, to learn more about recovery. And in that process, I interviewed a whole bunch of recovering addicts from all over the place, from all different backgrounds, about each of the 12 steps of the of recovery. And my eyes were opened massively in that process. And that's what kind of inspired RECO12 to happen after that. So here's a little bit about our today's meeting, today's speaker. Today we're going to be talking about step 10 with person Nick T, who I met through that process of the Journey Through Life, Journey in Recovery series. Now here's a little bit about Nick. He is an alcoholic and addict with, at this time, had over 3 years sobriety, and today has over 5 years sobriety. And he's going to share his experience, strength, and hope with step 10. And in this conversation, we really focus on the importance of being constantly aware and taking minute-by-minute inventory of self and being accountable to self and others in recovery. He shares his God shot, as he calls it, where God came into his heart and made him a changed man. This conversation is a very meaningful one and definitely heartfelt. I think you will really enjoy it. And Nick will be a speaker on RECO12 in 2023. He has not yet spoken before this, but we've got him lined up already and excited to hear his topic that he will speak on at that point. So here's a little bit of business to get to. If you love RECO12, if you even like it just a little bit, I invite you to share this with your recovery network, with those who you think would be inspired and lifted by these conversations, by these stories, by this experience, strength, and hope. And also get in there and rate and review it in the podcast platform of your choosing. And if you feel so inclined, donate. You can do that. There's links in the show notes. And we will be starting here very soon doing our getting back to our live meetings. That'll be starting January 6th of 2023, where Robert P. will be speaking to us on the topic of being alone versus being lonely in recovery. And it's going to be really powerful. He's really excited about it. He and I have interacted a few times in the last several weeks, and he's just really excited about kicking off the new year with us at RECO12. All right. I think that is all of the business here before we get into this. So let's jump right into the conversation that I had with Nick T back in the end of 2019 or perhaps early 2020. Here we go. So I'm sitting here today with Nick, and I'm real excited to talk to him. So Nick, why don't you introduce yourself as if you were in a 12-step meeting?
Excellent. My name is Nick. I'm an alcoholic addict.
Awesome. Hi, Nick.
Hello. Excited to be here and share kind of my experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being willing to do this, and I'm real excited to get your experience. So tell me a little bit about your introduction into what eventually became your addiction. And you may have a story where the first time you ever experienced it, it was like this amazing thing. At that time, it was amazing. So tell me about that.
Definitely. So I guess exactly what you said. My addiction started the very first time I tried a substance. Absolutely fell in love with it. And knowing now what I know about my alcoholism, I know that I was masking or covering things up from an early age. And I've dealt with some of those traumas, but it definitely helped ease all that pain right away. And I think at the beginning it was just for fun, and it kind of made me the cool kid, which made things even worse because I got the attention I was seeking too. But right away, that was some people were good at sports. I was really good at substance abuse. As horrific as it sounds now, it was a point of pride.
So how old were you when you first tried things out?
So 8 or 9.
Wow.
Alcohol, yeah. And then full-fledged addiction, daily use by about 13.
That's rough. So, and at 8 or 9 and into your very early teens, you were considered the cool kid because, you were doing these things that adults were doing or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
So how did that affect your self-esteem at that time, or your feelings of self-worth?
So it changed those because I had extremely low self-esteem, no self-worth. So to be the kid at the party that could bring alcohol and could do these things, like consume a lot and things like that, it was my identity. It was everything. And that's what it became to be all through high school. That was who I was and what I did. And yeah, that was it.
So it sounds like at this time, though, it was like you mentioned, it was kind of a point of pride. When was the first time you can recall thinking, this may not be the right thing for me to be doing? This might be getting out of hand.
I would say that the voice in the back of my head from the very beginning told me what I was doing was wrong. I knew what I was doing was wrong. The feelings I felt from that and all the what I took as positives just quieted that voice of reason completely. And so as my addiction became stronger, the justification and everything else that goes with it, I could justify any one of my negative actions almost on autopilot. And that definitely continued. That continues today. But yes, I knew what I was doing was wrong. Absolutely. And then the point, kind of going back to your question, was I think this sounds so bad, in elementary school, drinking before school. And I remember I had fallen down outside and got my new pants dirty because it had rained where I live. And I was muddy. And I remember thinking, this is like, what is happening to me? This is bad now.
In elementary school, you had that first inkling that this is kind of out of control, huh?
Yes.
Were your parents or teachers or anybody aware of what was going on?
Yeah. So I grew up in an alcoholic household. My dad was sober the first about 10 years of my life. And it had always been drilled into my head. Do not touch alcohol. Alcohol is extremely bad. It will ruin your lives, which reflecting back now made it more enticing to me. Being told not to do something in a very strange way made it more, I guess, of something to try. But I had always known a little bit. My dad was even involved in AA. And I can remember him maybe he would sit with his sponsor, things like that, very young, and I would listen. I could hear these conversations. So I kind of had an idea what was going on, but I didn't think I was to that point yet. Not in elementary school.
So your parents were somewhat aware, hey, Nick's getting into the cabinet or wherever you were getting it, right?
Yeah. There was never alcohol in the house. So I had to source from other places. But I think they always knew. But because I wasn't getting in legal trouble, I still continued to get good grades. I was always good at home, not getting in trouble. I think it was a look the other way situation.
Interesting. So what's your relationship with your parents like today? Are they still alive, or are you still? Tell me about that.
They got divorced when I was about 14 or 15, something like that. So, but because of my dad went back to addiction, and that was very difficult on the whole family, kind of left the whole family. And then my mom remarried, and so we just have a different relationship today. It works. It's okay. Yeah. I've worked through a lot of things. And so the cool part now is we have a lot of friends that we've got to make family, which is cool.
And I'm assuming a lot of these friends are kind of in the recovery world. Is that what you were alluding to?
A lot, but also a lot respect recovery. And I don't ask people to not drink around me. I understand this is the real world, and I'm the one that has that issue.
Right.
But to have someone respect it is very important to me.
Absolutely. That's really cool. I've heard a lot of people say in recovery circles, and I've said it before, some of my best friends in the world are people that I don't even know what their last name is.
Awesome. Yes, agreed. Yeah, very good.
There's a lot of support there in that community. And then, like you said, I love that you find friends who respect recovery, who aren't saying, "Oh, come on, man, it's New Year's Eve. Just have you can have one glass of wine or whatever."
No, they understand the magnitude of that and what that entails. Yeah, 100%.
No, that's fantastic to have that support system. So tell me what your rock bottom, what does that mean to you, and what has that looked like through your life?
Rock bottom has always, well, I won't say always, because there was a period of time where I felt like I had it under control, even though knowing what I know in the program, I never had anything under control.
Right.
It was just ramping up. So my rock bottom has always I've always been at rock bottom. And I've heard this in the rooms, and I like to use it for myself, but I hit rock bottom and started digging. And so I've always been digging, but my baseline is rock bottom, if that makes any sense. Because I've heard many stories in the rooms, and I don't like to compare, obviously, but I feel like those were a daily occurrence. Some people's rock bottoms were how I woke up. I don't, and I'm not trying to glamorize it at all. It was just very, very bad. And my life gets that bad as soon as I relapse. Every single time, worse and worse every time. So I would say my last relapse was 100% my rock bottom.
And what did that look like?
It just, it took drug addiction, things that I promised myself I would never do, to absolutely a daily thing. And then the people I hurt with zero, it didn't even flash through my mind. And then a long jail sentence. So I'd always done small little time in jail. This time was a long time.
So what you shared there is something that I've heard. You said, things that I promised myself I would never do, I just blew past those things.
100%.
We constantly, I know for me, for instance, I draw a line in the sand and I'd say, I'll go to that line, but I'll never cross that line, and then just blow right by it. All right, there's a new line. So tell me what your thoughts and experiences are on that. Why is that an important thing to recognize, blowing past those places that you promised you would never go past?
I think not only was I 100% okay with lying to everybody around me, I was lying to myself and believing these lies, and then justifying why I lied to myself again, broke another promise to myself. And so there was complete disregard for honesty, 1, 2, for my word, and 3, for having any sort of boundaries. There were no boundaries at all.
There's nothing off limits because of that,
nope.
Huh?
And that's how my addiction has always gone. When things start to go bad, it started as just an alcoholic, moved to other things. And there's absolutely no limit to the things I will do or won't do when I'm in that situation.
When you're in that situation, absolutely. And I'd like to, and we'll eventually get to kind of your perspective now as you look back on that. But I think right now I want to sit here for a few minutes and talk a little bit more about that. Just before we were talking, I was reading a little bit, but the step 10, the first couple of sentences in here reads, "In our addiction, we routinely tried to convince ourselves we were right, even when we knew we were wrong. This was one of the first unsettling truths about ourselves we had to face when we came into the fellowship." So that, you're just talking about that right. Perfectly is that experience there,
Yeah, absolutely.
How easy is it for someone who is in active addiction, struggling with things at that time, actively acting out, to lie to themselves? It's super easy to lie to others, but how easy it is to even lie to yourself,
Like second nature. It's not even a thought or a second thought for me in my experience. It just happens. And I can lie to myself about any situation that works. And I spoke to a counselor at one point in my life, because there's certain diagnoses that go with that. I can't remember the names of these things, but when you can lie to yourself and believe these lies, eventually to find out in the rooms and through this counselor, it's alcoholism. Okay. That's your disease. And, but yeah, it's that easy to lie to yourself. I think just as easy to anybody else.
Mm. I remember I was probably attending a group maybe for a month and a half, on a weekly basis before I came to the realization and I finally said out loud, and I'm a big fat liar. I guess I always knew that I was dishonest in these things, but I had never said anything out loud like that. And when I said that, I was like, wow, it was like a wall came down, crumbling down, and I saw a lot of the big fat lies that I had told myself and everybody else. But myself, it was the most painful. It was like, how could I even believe that or justify that? So is that something that can you relate to that?
Absolutely. I'm into your experience, almost like something you see in the movies. I explain it like my God shot where things crumbled around me. And I felt broken at this point. I mean, I had been emotional, but to finally be honest with yourself, it sounds like such a small thing, but to say, oh my gosh, I've been lying to myself. I am the biggest liar, not about small things, not about big things, all things. And to finally be honest like that, even to tell in the circle, is so freeing, I guess, eye-opening, and then a little bit overwhelming too. But I guess that's when the work starts. That initial that's me. I'm the liar, or I am the problem, or I am whatever it is.
It's about me and my part in it, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned early on in this conversation, and it's on the same line that you initially felt, and the voice in the back of your head was saying, this is wrong. And you felt that little twinge of guilt or whatever it may have been at that time. But that eventually you just raced past it. It went away. A phrase that I am familiar with in this, and it's from my religious background rather than from recovery, but it's called past feeling. You've become past feeling because of whatever justifications, actions, whatever it is that comes that way. And one thing that I experienced is I sought being past feeling because it hurt too much to feel. I didn't want that feeling. And it sounds like that God shot you're talking about, all of a sudden you felt. Tell me what that felt like the first time you felt.
I can't remember the first time, but I can remember the last time, or the one that counted, I guess I would say. Sounds silly, but I was in jail. My cellmate was very spiritual, believe it or not. He gave me a Bible the first day I came in. And my initial feeling was to hand it back because past feeling, I didn't want to accept responsibility. I knew the truth is in that book. I don't want it around me because I'm comfortable in this misery like I've been. But it took a couple hours. We prayed together and my life changed from that second to current moment right now.
So when you prayed together, that's when it happened, huh?
I lost it. As hard as or as tough as you want to be in a situation like that, I let everything go. It was it. That was it. That was my moment. And since then, I have this image of God, me drowning. I'm underwater looking up. He's had his hand here the whole time, but I've been swatting it away and trying to swim away, but still drowning. So that day in jail, I grabbed his hand, and it was, I've been here the whole time, not making me feel guilty, just welcome home. And so since then, the communication has just been wide open.
Awesome. So in that prayer with your cellmate, were you the voice or was your your cellmate the voice? Who was praying out loud?
My cellmate, it's still emotional to think about. It's just the most powerful thing I've ever experienced. And I hear about a lot of things, but that was my first experience with it. It was his voice. Yes, he was saying the prayer, but I believe it was all God. We really had nothing to do with that at that point.
Do you remember what was said at the time? What he said in that?
It was something to the degree that, Nick is here broken, and the decisions he's made over the last, months have got him here we just protect you while he's in here, and when he gets out, something to that degree. I wish I knew.
But you just felt that overwhelming,
completely overwhelming
feeling.
Yes.
Awesome. That's such a blessing to have that in your life. And, I totally relate to the swatting God's arm away. I got this, that's my favorite. That's my go-to line when I'm a mess. I got this. I got myself in here. I have to get myself out. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in the leading up to or the rock bottom part of your recovery, addiction and recovery story that you want to talk about now before we get into talking about step 10?
Maybe just a little bit more to the backstory. Things that I always dealt with, extreme jealousy, like we talked about early, no self-confidence, actually believing that I was the smallest in the room, maybe not physically, but mentally and everything else. I always felt that way. So never felt like I fit in. All of these things, and that just continued on. Whether I was in active addiction or not, I struggled with those things.
How has that thought process changed? I'm sure you don't think of yourself as the greatest in the room still, but tell me what your thoughts are with that now.
I used some of those hard times. I've been through complete worse, so that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the whole idea of turning it over to God when things get difficult. When I first got sober would be second to second. Almost every thought that came in my mind, I would turn over to God because everything was too overwhelming at this point. I would say, please, God, take this from me. I cannot handle this right now. And God would help me with all these things. Now that I've got a little bit of time, I still do it, but it's not as often.
So what is your sobriety date, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't. So I think it was 2016, day after Christmas, or
so we're coming right up on it, huh?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I don't count the days anymore. Right. Once we got past a year, maybe 2 years, I felt good again because I've had long-term sobriety. Sobriety meaning I wasn't drinking or anything else, but not healthy at all. So this is the first time real sobriety on all aspects.
Awesome. So when I reached out to you and said, hey, here are the steps that I have left to cover, you got back to me and said, I'd love to do step 10.
Yes.
So I'm going to read step 10 at the heading to it, and then let's talk about that. So step 10 is continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So tell me about step 10 and what that phrase means to you, and then how you practice it. So
for me, in my sobriety, I don't want to say it's fragile, but if I let one thing slip by, a lie, an inappropriate thought, the next thing where we go back talking about justification, I can justify any bad behavior once then. So I have to have my mind on the tightest leash, which means the continue to take personal inventory. I used to think it was at the end of the day. Let's inventory the whole day and reflect. That's not how I do it today. It's thought by thought. Go back. Was that appropriate? Okay. What should we do? And if I was wrong, promptly admit it, or whatever corrective action needs to be done. Because I have to be so, I guess because it means so much to me now. This is extremely important. Just the maintenance of taking personal inventory or taking stock of any emotion, jealousy, anything that comes into my mind has to be dealt with at that point. I almost can't wait till the end of the day. And like I said, it's not as bad as it was. My racing thoughts in mind and things like that, but my autopilot or my default is to be a liar, dishonest, and think of the worst things. Again, with God's help, everything's a lot easier.
Right.
But it still tries to get away sometimes.
So I'm putting myself in the shoes of somebody who may be listening who is battling themselves right now, saying, no, I am not an addict. I just have a little problem that I've been trying to take care of unsuccessfully for 30 years or, whatever it may be.
Absolutely.
And they hear you say, I have to keep my mind on the strictest leash. They might immediately go, there is no way I'm going to do that. I don't want to do that. Then I'm in slavery to whatever is there. So tell me, is that how you see it right now? Or tell me how you see that.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. It's totally the complete opposite. I would embrace this. Well, I'll explain it this way. The misery and muck and mire I lived in completely until the last 3 years, compared to my life right this second, I will do whatever it takes to maintain this and not go back to that situation. That's the difference for me. It may seem like maintenance, things like this. Again, that is a drop in the bucket compared to the things that I had to do in my addiction, maintaining lies, constantly running, scrambling, always panic. And when you're in addiction, you understand what that panic is. Life is so much easier today that the tight leash on my mind is nothing, absolutely nothing, and well worth it.
Yeah. I mean, you hear about people saying, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Whereas when we're in active addiction, it's raining shoes and we're just trying. There's not the other shoe. It's millions of shoes coming around. Huh?
Yep. Yes. Absolutely.
So with step 10, you say it's a kind of a minute by minute thing. Give me an example of a time where you've had a thought, you've said something, you've done something where you suddenly went, that was not appropriate, the right thing to do right now, and you then took the actions or steps necessary to make it right immediately.
With the lying behavior or dishonesty that comes almost first in my mind before the truth comes out, would be exaggeration too. So just during this interview, if you want me to think of the most recent, my mind wants to go to an exaggeration. And I have to correct myself all the time. I do that even just in speaking with my wife. I have to go, there must have been 30 cars. And wait a minute. No, there were 2 cars in front of,
Yeah.
And it's that. And I know that doesn't sound like a big deal to people, but to me, 100% honesty has to be, or everything else goes haywire. And I'm off and running with everything. Maybe not right away, but I know from the past that the one lie goes through. My mind thinks it's okay. We're on to 2, on to 3, on to 4, and then we're who knows where.
One thing that I have heard, and I try to put into practice the best I can, imperfectly, but is if you always tell the truth, you can have a crappy memory and you'll still be fine, because
agreed.
Weaving those lies, how do you remember what?
Absolutely. And I have, this has been recent within the last couple months. I used to never be able to say, I don't know. Okay. I would lie to you before I told you I don't know, because that makes me seem not smart. I say I don't know all day, which is a big thing for me. Again, these small things I know sound irrelevant and tiny, but they make a big difference to me, especially taking it as seriously as we now do. And with that maintenance step, decision by decision, by thought, just has to be a quick correction. Otherwise, I used to explain it like this: the horse is my mind. I am riding the horse or controlling the horse, and it wants to keep turning right, wants to keep going right. I have to constantly correct, or we're going in circles and back the area we don't want to be, or that we've been too many times before.
So the method you use now in working your step 10 day, you're maintaining, right away. Have you ever done like a daily spreadsheet or something like that to work your step 10? What have those looked like?
Well, I used to journal early on, a lot of journaling, even explain. And that was the reflection at the end of the day, going back. What happened today? What made me angry? What were those emotions? And that was, I think, just a self-reflection, which I still continue to do. I don't put it on paper anymore, but was very eye-opening, I guess, to see. Well, why would you get jealous of this? And then, or find out that jealousy was even the emotion behind that. But it helps moving forward to know, okay, I have a problem with these things: jealousy, self-esteem, and everything, really. Almost every emotion.
Hmm. That's good. So why have you chosen not to continue journaling, physical journaling?
I would say time, I guess. So what I do is, between clients when I work, it's a lot of driving, and that's my reflection time.
Hmm.
And then I can reflect back 2 hours instead of the whole day. And then also, being right on top of a situation helps. So I like to think that I do my step 10 1,000 times a day.
Hmm.
Just the constant maintenance.
And that's sounds like that's kind of where you live, is in that
Yep.
daily maintenance. Some people will say, I live in, well, one of the guys that I've talked to so far, it was on step 2, and he goes, I live in step 2. This is where
Yeah.
I live, and this is where I have to. And that's really cool that step 10 is yours. So what other of the steps have been kind of important to you in your own recovery?
Turning everything over to God,
Hmm.
like I said, in that jail cell was, I guess, the most important, because that set everything in motion.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe turning everything over to God, I guess, was that. And moving forward, I mean, I still do that. Like I said, if something seems too overwhelming in my mind, I have to give it to God, because it's too big for me to handle. And I know that when I get overwhelmed, I'll procrastinate, lie, cheat, steal, and then here we go. So
That's really interesting. So one of the words that comes to my mind as I think about your practice of step 10, your daily maintenance, or your minutely maintenance, basically,
mhm.
and you're turning things over to God. The word that comes to my mind with that is surrender.
Mhm.
First, tell me what surrender meant to you, you know, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and what it means to you now.
Okay, defeat, I would say. Well, 5 years ago, surrender was, I'm weak. I can't handle it. I'm less than a man. Things like this would pop in my head. Today means I'm weak. I can't handle it, but I accept that, and again, I surrender. I can't handle these things, but I'm glad to hand them over to you, God,
Hmm.
because I have complete trust that you'll take care of this, through past experiences, through daily everything that gets taken care of, or all the blessings in my life.
Hmm.
I know that God has this, and I don't doubt that. So um, the difference of surrender from then to now, I guess, is night and day. But I'm okay with it. It still says the same things. It just has different meaning. Where I am weak, yes, I am weak. I am very weak, and I will tell
Mhm.
anybody that. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah, man, I love that you used the same words to describe it, and yet it's such a different concept.
Completely.
Because initially, I'm weak, I'm less than, I can't deal with life in pretty much any other place in the world. Means I'm curling up in a ball in the corner and just waiting for life to kick me over and over and over again. Whereas when you say it in recovery, I'm weak, I'm less than, I can't handle this on my own. It's like I'm standing up, hands outstretched, saying, I can't do this, but I know you can, God. And here I go. I'm going to walk on and until the next thing comes to me that I can't handle and give it to you, huh?
Absolutely. That's exactly it.
It's the same words, totally different meaning. That's awesome. Thank you for expounding on that.
No,
I love that. Okay. So if somebody were to approach you and say, hey, Nick, I'm really struggling with alcohol or whatever, and I think I've got a problem. I see that you are doing some things in your life. Tell me a little bit about it. How would you go about sharing hope, I guess, with someone else?
I guess I always try to maybe find a different way other than telling my complete story. I don't know. I don't know how much that helps people to know that. I mean, it may. I guess it depends on the situation.
Okay.
Because some people I've spoke to, I have to explain that um, I know exactly where you're at, and I also know where things go from here if you continue down this path. So if I need to elaborate on that, I guess I would.
Mm-hmm.
But I rather share all the positives in my
Yeah.
life, because if you know me from back then, I'm still the same Nick. I just have a way better life. So I would like to share those positives with somebody. And then I could also share, I guess, a little bit how I get there. So instead of going, with my past, I'll tell you about where I am today, maybe.
Yeah. Have you had those opportunities of people approaching you and saying, dude, I'm lost. What do I need to do?
Yes, a few. But I've also reached out to a few because you can see it, yep, especially close people. And so I like to share that. I like to share the hope, which is great. So I have had that opportunity. Yeah.
So let's say there's somebody that's near where you lived in rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
There's a stark, in my mind, there's a stark difference between powerlessness and hopelessness. How do you share hope with somebody who feels like there is no hope? Because I'm sure you felt like there's no hope.
For a long time. Absolutely. I think the spirituality piece is the most important because when you feel powerless or feel hopeless, for me, the only one that can change those feelings is God. And so far continues to be the only one that can change those feelings. So I would encourage someone just to open up those channels, whoever God is to them, get back in communication. Maybe you had it at one point. And if not, sort that out. That's been the biggest thing for me. Definitely.
What was your perception of God previous to this experience, that God shot moment you were talking about?
I grew up in church my whole life. I was born, raised in church. I know who God is. But as soon as I was deep in my misery and addiction, I turned that off and actually went the opposite way. Even though, being honest, right now, I knew the whole time what I was doing. Even when I would say things out loud, denying God, things like these, I still knew. I knew what I was doing. It was still there. But it didn't fit in the schedule of addiction. Having that there, having God in my heart, it was very uncomfortable to hear things about God and things like that. So I would push it as far away as I could, because I liked being there on a very disturbing level. It was comfortable. It was where I wanted to be. As much as I would talk about how miserable I was, there was a small piece of me that enjoyed being there, in that absolute destruction and devastation.
Did you feel like it was easy to be in that destruction and devastation, or was it hard to be there and you just wanted to be there?
I think it took work to stay there. Yeah. But to make changes to better myself wouldn't allow me to justify what I wanted to keep doing. So yeah, it would sometimes be a struggle to stay there. And all the time, I guess I knew the way out. But again, knowing about my disease now, it wasn't necessarily the substance. It was all my other issues that I had to deal with. And that was just a symptom of my disease.
There are going to be people listening that say, disease, what the heck? Addiction, that's not a disease, that's a choice. Tell me a little bit about your perception of that.
Going back, all the way back, before I, touched substances, I can remember not feeling adequate, all these things. And I talk to people, and normies or people that don't struggle with addiction don't have these feelings, thoughts, emotional issues, I guess, that I have. So yes, it's a disease.
But is there choice in that? So yes, and I'm totally on board with what you're saying. I just want to see how we can communicate this in a way where somebody can go, Oh, okay. Well, I guess I can see that. So we have this disease, and I like to compare it to, diabetes,
Yep.
where maybe even the I think it's type 2 is the type that you get into because of many times because of poor eating choices or whatever else, but it's there, and it will be there until we're safely dead. But where does choice fit in? Because I mean, in recovery, we have to make a choice and a series of choices every day so that this disease doesn't ravage us. So where does choice fit in there?
Choice, just coming back to step 10 quickly, is I make a decision when those thoughts come in my mind to do right. Uh, Constantly, I make a choice to make the right decision, because if I don't, left to my own thoughts or where things default to, I go back to the same.
That horse just goes in a circle then, huh?
Yep. If I don't correct that, we're back to where we were.
Hmm. Very cool. No, I appreciate that. And I think that although many people still will say you just don't have the willpower or the moral fortitude or whatever it may be, man, that's a tough one to battle when people are saying things like that. But
I would say to the person saying those things, maybe willpower was, I was not allowed home. I had little babies, little daughters. That mean the world to me. My wife, that's been there for me through thick and thin. I wanted to be in my house with my family. So it wasn't about willpower. If I could will myself to stop drinking or drugs, um, to get back in that house and be a good dad that I wanted to be, that I was meant to be, I would have done that. It's not about willpower. So no.
um, so here's a question I wanted to come back to. You mentioned earlier that you had previously had some stints of sobriety, or but it was different. It's different now than it was then. So I have four terms here that I'd like to get your definition of each of them and why you define it this way. So the four terms: first one is abstinence, second one's sobriety, third one's recovery, and the fourth one's healing. Now tell me your definition of those things and how that fits into this.
Abstinence, to abstain. Well, for me, there's certain triggers, like anything else. Abstinence, so to abstain, complete people, places, and things that I need to avoid, to not fall into very easy traps that I've fallen into 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I don't go hang out in a bar. I can't. Some people with a long time recovery can do things like that. I may be able to, but I choose not to. There's no reason for me to do those things. So I would steer clear of that. I guess maybe that, abstaining from all harmful situations, obvious harmful situations. I mean, there's things that come up that
Right.
I have to address. Sobriety is my life. Yeah, that's my life, and that's what everything for me hinges on. The life I have today. Yes.
Okay. Recovery.
Recovery is daily. Recovery is happening daily. It's a constant reflection. It's constantly redirecting. But it is amazing. Again, I credit all the things I have today to my life in recovery. And it's not a one and done thing, but I'm okay with that, again, because of all the benefits. It may sound like work or a hassle or a hindrance or something to somebody else, but to me, I welcome it because it's nothing compared to the work it was to be in active addiction, I guess.
And then the last term is healing.
Healing is really cool because, like I explained, drinking was one symptom of my disease. Getting through some of those hangups that I used to use as justifications to use was a healing process. I'm still in my healing process, but it gets easier every day, and it's so freeing. so freeing to let things go or to be completely healed of something. Or again, part of healing is admitting that you're the one with the issue. Just extremely freeing. Yeah.
Well, very cool. Thank you for those. How important for you, and how important do you believe it is for someone to get into a program and get a sponsor and work the steps?
I think extremely important. At least go in and talk to somebody or go to one meeting, find your meeting, because there's several types of different types of rooms. Don't make a judgment on the first when you go in. Find yours, give it a chance, give it a real chance too, because again, we lie to ourselves. And if you go in, you will find a one hiccup in the room, and count yourself out and justify why you don't need to be there. So be truthful with yourself, give it a real chance. Yeah. And then find somebody, maybe not the first person you encounter either. Check out some sponsors, give them an interview, see if it's a good fit. And don't go on your first instinct, because most times in my experience, it's not the person you would hope it would be in a good sponsor, in my experience.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that experience where finding the sponsor that was the right one for you kind of went over some rocks or whatever?
One of my first sponsors was very early on. Kind of the loudest, coolest guy, I would say, in the room. Definitely looked cool to me. Anyway, he had relapsed, and we didn't really get anywhere. But one of my best was a guy about, I don't know, maybe triple my age, that we really had nothing in common at all. And I actually thought he was very mean at the very beginning when I first met him. But yeah, that was good.
So I like how you said that. So my sponsor was one who just kicked my butt, military style.
Yeah.
And that it was kind of a turnoff to me at first. It's like, what? But as I guess, humbled myself, or was humbled, I recognized that that's actually how I needed it to happen in my life, was somebody to really put my feet to the fire. And if I even questioned anything, he'd say, all right, well, if you don't want me as your sponsor anymore, you got till 4:00 this afternoon to let me know, and I'll move on, and whatever, And I was like, wait, what? I totally get it. The person that needs to be your sponsor may not be the person you would choose.
Absolutely not.
Because I like how you said, the coolest guy in the room, and it didn't work out, So
yeah, he was too. He ran the meeting. He really cool guy. Anyway, just didn't work out. Yeah, my last, he was about like 77 years old, and he used to tell me everything I would say coming out of my mouth early on was, "You're lying to me."
Oh.
But I would have to reflect, and I sometimes genuinely would be like, "I'm not lying." We would reflect back or think back, and talking later on with him, I'm like, "How?" He said, "Listen, I knew everything you were saying was a lie. You were lying to yourself. You were lying to everyone else. I wanted you to see how it felt." Anyway, it was a big turning point, like we talked about with the I am a liar. Yeah.
That's funny. You're lying about that.
Everything. Yeah. Even things that I wasn't,
Right. But he just wanted to make sure you were reflecting and making sure. No, that's awesome. So before we close this up, Nick, there's going to be somebody listening to this, I'm sure, who's on the fence. And like we mentioned earlier, maybe in denial, or thinking, oh, maybe I do have a problem. Maybe I do need to do something. If you wouldn't mind kind of issuing an invitation to that person of, yes, come join, but a testimonial of what you have learned through your own journey in recovery.
Again, with honesty, try to be honest with yourself when making a decision to enter into recovery, and just realize that you aren't as happy as you think you are. Again, you're lying to yourself, or your substance is lying to you, for sure. Just come check it out, because the other side is so much more freeing. And any excuse you have is simply that. Let it go. Please let it go. Life is just much better on this side. And it is worth living if you're at that point, because I've been there too. I've been there too, where you feel like there is no one else and the only way is out. It's not. And you will make it through. So just come into one of the rooms and ask for help. You're not alone at all. There are millions of us, and we can help. There's people at all different stages. So just come give it a chance. Let it go.
That's awesome. So last question. I'm going to read this and then ask you the question. Step 12 reads, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics, addicts, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Nick, how do you try to live your step 12?
Maintaining sobriety, maintaining honesty, and then being a helping hand. I was very apprehensive and anxious to do this interview even. But if this helps one person, I'm continuing my step 12. Also just being an example, I guess, of the benefits of not only maybe of the program, but of sobriety in general. Just living a clean life, healthy life, honest life, spiritual life, and showing what can happen when you do turn your life around and finally be honest with yourself and everyone else.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Is there anything else you want to share before we close this up?
Just back to step 10, just honestly owning and accepting your flaws. That's a big piece. I had just written that down. And that's just a big part of step 10, but I really appreciate this opportunity.
And I love that, owning and accepting your flaws. Thanks, Nick. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Justin.
Well, there it is. Nick, I hope you really enjoyed it. I loved his take. I loved his honesty. I loved the fact that the process that he goes through every day on that daily accountability portion of step 10, taking daily inventory, and when I'm wrong, promptly admitting it. I love the prompt part of this. Anyways, once again, we will be getting back to our live meetings on January 6th. To get invited to those, if you aren't already on the email list, go to RECO12.com and join us there. You can also send an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12POD@gmail.com and get on the list there. We'll get you those emails and links so you can join us live every Friday at noon Central Time with amazing speakers who will be sharing their experience, strength, and hope on lots of different recovery topics. We're already booked out into May, and it's really exciting to have that happen and to really have people who are excited about sharing their experience, strength, and hope. On that note, if you are also someone who would like to share your experience, strength, and hope with the RECO 12 audience, speaking for 20 to 25 minutes on the recovery topic of your choice, and then answering questions of the live audience and of myself for another 20 to 25 minutes, send that email to RECO12pod@gmail.com, and I'd love to talk to you and get those things set up. We may be doing some special episodes, some special things during the year too. So if you would like to record it earlier, we can make that happen. But yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the new year coming up. And I think that's about it for this episode. Remember, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Keep coming back, everybody. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and binded with the seal